Hello and welcome to the YouTube channel of mprugs.com. Hope you and your family are doing well. If you are a fan or collector and owner of the Turkish Hereke rugs, this is going to be a two-part series of videos where I'm going to be showcasing the workshops that are synonymous with the Hereke carpet weaving culture in Turkey that dates back all the way to the beginning of it. So, and in this video, this is part one. I have showcased 4 rugs. I'm going to be introducing the different workshops. These are workshops such as the Attila Bash Tough, Ozipek, Susler-Hali, and also Derin. These are 4 workshops and associations that have their roots directly tied to the beginning of the Hereke weaving culture that I'll explain to you in a little bit. In the next video, I'm going to be showcasing several of the more contemporary workshops. So in this video, it's all about the Hereke workshops that are synonymous with the end of the breakup of the Ottoman Empire. That is when the carpet weavers were basically freed and let loose. I'm going to talk about it. So to basically get started, for those of you that are into the silk rugs, the handmade silk carpets, you know when you talk about the carpet weaving cultures throughout the world, when it comes to silk rugs, there is basically the Turkish Hereke. There are places like the Gum silk rugs in Iran. There are the Persian rugs. But in this video, it's all about the Hereke rugs. And the Hereke rugs, they basically date back to right about 1835, 1840. The person that is credited with the creation of what has become basically the Hereke rugs is the Ottoman Sultan Abdülmecid I, and I'm going to be apologizing up front. I'm going to be screwing up names left and center. This has always been one of my trademarks. But basically, in the Ottoman Empire, Abdülmecid is famous for basically being inspired by the carpet weaving culture. He saw it in the Persian Empire, he saw it elsewhere, and he was so intrigued by it that he decided that he is going to basically have an imperial order to establish an imperial workshop in 19 and depending on who you ask, 1841 to 1843 is when it started, but the wheels started turning long before that. He basically said, look, we're going to establish a trade shop where we are going to train the weavers locally. We're going to bring in the artisans. We're going to bring in the grandmasters, Persia, even from the European, from the Caucasus region, doesn't matter. We're going to bring them in. We're going to have them train our weavers, because Turkey at the time was really famous also for their silk. So they had the ingredients for the Hereke rugs, which is what the Hereke rugs are famous for, the pure silk rugs. And so the silk was there. He brought in the skilled laborers that taught the local populations, the Turkish population, how to weave the rugs. And they were woven with the double knot, what is became known as the Turkish knot. This is a very strong double knot, and also allows for very, very fine, detailed, incredible tight weaving that you don't find, for example, in any other types of rugs. So he is basically what many people consider to be the founding person behind the whole Hereke carpet weaving culture. Then, after the end of World War I, Turkey took the side of the Germans during World War I, and a lot of people said that as a result of the end of the World War I, the Ottoman Empire basically, the Allies basically told the Ottoman sultans, it's time to pack your bags and leave. We're going to transform Turkey into a more democratic state and all that stuff. As you all know, after World War I, basically Germany and the other countries that were associated with the Germans were basically punished by the Allies. I'm not here to talk about the history. It is what it is. So in the 1920s, the Imperial Manufacturing Center of the Hereke rugs was broken up. But by that time, you already had over 80 years of carpet weaving experience. The trade was flourishing, and what you ended up with were individuals who were basically free to set up their own workshops. And this is what, in this case right here, I have taken 4 carpets that we have, even though the carpets themselves, like for example, the Derin here that dates to the 1960s, the carpets here are not they're not 100 years old or so. But the workshops that these carpets were made, and like I said, we have 4 of them right here. I wanted to showcase them as examples of workshops where the founders were actual members. They actually have direct roots to the imperial manufacturing. So these are the 4 right here. There are many others, but these 4 are well known. In the next video, I'm going to be talking about basically 4 different types of workshops that came about after World War II. There's always been a discussion, there's always been an understanding that the Hereke workshops before World War II had a little bit different mindset than the ones that came after. 3 workshops and 1 is in work association. I'm going to leave the association for the end because it's kind of a unique thing. But one of the best known, one of the early creators of the Hereke works after the breakup of the imperial manufacturing that in the 1920s is this piece right here. It's a very, very old piece. It's actually become almost a novelty. The Attila Bash Tough, and forgive me for screwing up the name there. You can see the prominent signature. This is a very, very old piece. It's a stunning piece, 1010 quality. But this is one of the earliest workshops. From what I understand, and it's so difficult to really tie things down because back then there was very little literature. Unfortunately, when the workshops were created, they didn't bother going out to write books about them and everything. So it's a lot of it is just word of mouth that has just been passed down from generations. But the Attila here, this is oftentimes credited with being one of the originals. From the breakup, absolute stunning piece right here. This is a great example of what they're all about. You also have the colors, for example. You will notice in all of these pieces, in the old days, you did not have strong, solid, bold colors. That did not really come about until after World War II. Early on, you had more earthly colors. And so this right here, this is a beautiful example of what the older pieces would look like. Next, you also have, along with the Attila Bash Tough, you also have the Susler-Hali. I'm going to skip it. This is also one of the oldest workshops around, like the atelier. This is also a workshop that had a very difficult time starting in the 70s, adjusting. These are workshops very conservative, very traditional. They made something and they absolutely made it perfect. Problem was, like in the case of the Susler-Hali, when you look at their carpets, you will almost always see the Merab design. This design, which I have also featured in many of my other videos, this is briefly, you'll oftentimes see this here in the Ozipek. Here's another example. The Merab design is the idea is that you hang this up on the wall. It is a window to look through in the direction of Mecca. It's what some people refer to as a religious design. It is also commonly found on prayer rugs. But the Susler-Hali were really well known for these types of designs. Again, this is a workshop that basically went extinct in the early 70s. They just had a difficult time. And by the time the last of their rugs were sold in the 80s, they were basically gone. Another one was the Derin workshop. The Derin workshop, even though they were able to last into the 80s, their heydays were actually in the old days, all the way up to 1950. Starting in the 50s and 60s, they started to be thin out basically. But the Derin workshop, same as the Susler-Hali and the Attila Bash Tough, they have their roots directly rooted into the imperial manufacturing. And lastly, you have the Ozipek, the best known of all the Hereke workshops, of all the names when it's synonymous with the Hereke rugs, is the Ozipek. But the Ozipek was not an actual business. It was not a workshop. There was not a single store that you can go to and buy Ozipek rugs. The Ozipek was a trade group. What they decided to do was they had a large number of weavers in the Hereke region that they didn't have their name recognition, they didn't have their money to basically start their own shops like Susler-Hali, Derin, or so many of the others. But what they had was skill. What they had was connections. And so they basically got together as a band. And I oftentimes refer to them as like almost like being like a union. So the Ozipek weavers, they shared their designs, they got their silk and their dyes and everything from the same place. So when you look at the Ozipek rugs from the different eras, you would oftentimes see different signatures. You would sometimes you have them in Arabic, sometimes in the Latin, and then sometimes you see it in the Turkish. You will also notice there is a great abundance in designs and colors and shapes and sizes. I mean, the Ozipeks are kind of like the best, the most dominant, superior workshop that also goes all the way back to the imperial manufacturing that was set up by Sultan Abdülmecid I. So the Ozipek, like in this piece right here, even unlike the other ones, those guys were smart enough and they were able to evolve. So when you have, for example, you have the piece right here that I'm just using this one as an example. It's a very old one, but when you look at the colors, you can see the patina and you can see the colors. But then you look at some of the other Ozipeks, and you can see how it complete different design, complete different colors, yet they are the same workshop. On another example, for example, the Derin one, you have the Derin piece right here. This is now a single workshop. So you had, and then for example, you can see the right here with a beautiful older piece that's a pheasant. This is an 1111 quality. But you can see there was a little bit of um, diversity when it comes to colors, when it comes to designs and everything. But then you also had the older workshops like the Susler-Hali, and you have the Attila Bash Tough, who they just wanted to do one thing and do it one thing, and they did it perfectly well until it just didn't become popular anymore. And so one of the questions that I've had from many of you that are passionate about the Turkish rugs was for me to showcase some of the workshops, give you a little bit of information about them. So what I thought I'd do is I split them up into two groups. The ones where the founding folks actually had been a part of the imperial manufacturing. And then in the next video, I'm going to be talking about basically their offsprings, Hereke shops that were the origin is their master weavers right here who went out and basically opened up their own workshops and everything, like the KNG workshop that you can see here. And so I'm going to see you guys again. For those of you that are into this Turkish Hereke rugs, don't forget to check out the many of our other videos. We're also proud to have one of the largest collection of genuine Turkish rugs, because they're Turkish Hereke rugs. As you all know, there's a lot of fraud associated with them. If you go to places like Turkey, Greece, if you are in the Mediterranean and you take cruises, chances are you are going to stumble across the majority of them being made in China and sold as Turkish pieces. I've talked about that also in many of my videos. So there's a lot of information in our channel as well as on our website as mprugs.com. I'm going to be coming back to you short with the second part of the video. So hope in the meantime, wishing you all the very best until we see each other again. Take care. Bye-bye.